Welcome, everyone. It is 9 a.m. on the East Coast. I'm going to give everybody just a minute or so before we get started. Just watching the participant list climb up. But good morning, welcome, and we will get started in just a minute. All right, we got folks from Charlestown, Atlanta. Good morning, Ed. Happy Friday. Right. Yeah, I think it's safe to get started. So I will let's get going. So good morning, everyone. My name is Brian Freeland, and I am the interim dean for the School of STEM. Welcome to day 2 of the Space Education and Strategic Applications Conference. I will be your moderator for this morning's session, and it is my distinct privilege to introduce our keynote speaker, Chief Master Sergeant John Bentavegna. John Bentavegna leads the highest enlisted level in the Space Force, shaping the future of this groundbreaking military branch. He represents the enlisted force with passion and dedication, advising the Chief of Space Operations and the security of the Air Force on matters critical to the welfare, readiness, and development of Space Force personnel. With a career that began in the U.S. Air Force in 1994, Chief Bentavegna has been a driving force behind the growth of the maintenance and space operation fields. Since joining the Space Force in 2020, he has played a key role in advancing our nation's leadership in space. We're incredibly fortunate today to have him here to share his vision and insight with us. Please give him a warm welcome, Chief Master Sergeant John Bentavegna. Thanks for being here, John.
Hey, Brian, thanks a lot, and good morning, everyone. So, Bentavegna is not an easy name to say. So my go by, and all military people have to have a nickname. Mine's nothing as cool as Maverick or Goose, but B9, because it's Bentavegna, B in 9 letters. So B9 is what most people refer to me as. So please feel free to call me B9, Chief B9, whatever is good for you. So I think I'm the first speaker of the day on a Friday. So hope everyone is up and having a coffee like I am out of my favorite rocket mug. And I'm excited to be here. So, ladies and gentlemen, students and fellow space enthusiasts, or I like to say teammates, it's an honor and privilege to be here today with the Space Education and Strategic Applications Conference. I love the theme of preparing for the cosmos, readying the next generation of space explorers. I hope everyone enjoyed last night's star party at the Wallasey Boston Observatory. Unfortunately, I missed it because I was preparing for this event, getting my notes together. But if I'm honest, I was also watching an episode of Acolyte on Disney Plus, so please don't judge me with that. So I'm home today, actually, so you can kind of see the background. I'm in my home office. So just in case you hear some noise, I have my office mates here, my dogs. Twinkie's my little French bulldog, and Saki, my little Japanese chin, are in the house. So if you see him barking, I apologize for that, but I am home. So I have some prepared comments I want to make and talk about kind of my perspective from an enlisted guardian, if you will, about the domain and where I see the threat and where I see the service. But I'm hoping just to kind of have a conversation and save some time at the end for some discussion and maybe some questions. I'd like to extend a heartfelt thanks to American Public University and Policy Studies Organization for organizing this important event and for inviting me to speak. I'm thrilled to be here, especially as one of the over 147,000 alumni from American Military University, where I actually went to school and earned my Bachelor's of Arts in Political Science. It was a long journey. It took me several years to do it, but I appreciate all the support and education and experience I got through AMU. The overarching theme of this conference is not only timely, but also crucial for the continued advancement of humanity's presence in space. As we gather here today, we are united by a shared vision to build a future where space is accessible, sustainable, and beneficial to all of humanity. In this pursuit, education plays a pivotal role in inspiring and preparing the next generation of space dreamers who will continue to push the boundaries of human knowledge and achievement. But before we delve into the discussion, let me introduce myself a little bit more. So as Brian said, I'm Chief Master Sergeant of the Space Force, John Bentavegna, and I serve as one of the highest enlisted members of the service, and I provide direction for the enlisted force, representing their interests to the American public and to all those at high levels of the government. I also act as a personal advisor to the Chief of Space Operations, General Chance Saltzman, and the Secretary of the Air Force, Frank Kendall, on all issues regarding welfare, readiness, morale, proper utilization, and development of the United States Space Force. I'm just a humble kid from Jersey City, New Jersey, to be honest with you. And I've been wearing a uniform for over 30 years now. And when I initially enlisted, I enlisted as a 4-year job. I thought I was going to do 4 years and go back to Jersey City and try to get on either the fire department or the police department in Jersey City. But somewhere along those initial 4 years, that contract turned into a commitment, a lifelong commitment. And I'm still here today. And my service has offered up opportunities for me I never thought I'd get, like sitting here today speaking with you. So it's very humbling to get a chance to do that. I entered this United States Air Force in 1994, and like Brian said, I did some maintenance work, but most of my career was in the space operations career field, and I've had the opportunity to fill positions at all echelons of command within the military: squadron, division, group, wing, numbered Air Force, field command, and headquarters in the Pentagon, as well as now the service level of the service. For most of my career, I did space operations as an airman in the United States Air Force. So when the Space Force was established in 2019, it just made a lot of sense for me to kind of transfer over and join this brand new service. So on 1 September 2020, which was the first day that people were eligible, if you will, by law to transfer over from one service to another, I entered the United States Space Force. And I've been proud of the vital part I've played in this organization from the beginning. I tell you, over 70 years standing up the first service in the Department of Defense, in over 70 years, it's challenging trying to stand up a brand new service, but also very rewarding. General Saltzman, my teammate and my boss, talks about, think about it as a football team analogy, where when we were under the Air Force, we were like a special teams on a football team. We were really good at that special team, but now we're independent service. So that special team now is responsible for managing the entire franchise of a football team, which takes a lot. It's a different way of thinking. It takes different infrastructure, different policies and procedures, but we've been getting after it for the past 5 years. So I'm excited to be on this journey. Like all of you in the Space Force, we place high value on education, and it's a significant factor in the success of our Guardians. All right, so what's a Guardian? I've been saying the phrase a couple times. So a Guardian is what we refer to ourselves in the United States Space Force. So if you're in the Navy, they call you a sailor. If you're in the Marines, you're a Marine. If you're in the Army, they call you soldiers. And in the Air Force, they call them airmen. But in the Space Force, we call ourselves Guardians. So you're going to hear me use that term a couple times today. I just wanted to kind of clear that, let you know what I'm talking about when I say it. So Guardians, their expertise is essential for the critical missions of protecting and defending America's interests in space. One of our core values as a service is commitment, and that's commitment to mastery of your skill craft, commitment to mastery of your life. It means to be a lifelong learner. This dedication is critical for the success of the Space Force, and it helps to ensure that our Guardians have the knowledge and skills necessary to carry out their missions. This thirst for knowledge and understanding is also essential across the entirety of society for the future of space exploration, as it enables us to develop new technologies and innovations that will help us to unlock the full potential of space. The United States must invest in the next generation. Advancing STEM education is critical to continuing U.S. leadership into the next decade and preparing the nation's STEM workforce to fuel the space economy of the future. We must recognize the importance of space as a critical domain for national security, economic prosperity, and scientific discovery. The Space Force, with its dedicated workforce of military and civilian Guardians, is tasked with the vital mission of securing our nation's interests in, from, and to space, while ensuring that our forces, allies, and humanity have the ability to harness space whenever and wherever they need it. If you could please play the first video.
Time, not long ago, when life was simple. We stayed close to home, connected in person, and all the while, we looked to the stars. But time moves forward. And today, life as we know it is anything but simple. Our world is more connected now than ever before. A globalized network of commerce, communications, travel, and industry. Technology has transformed the way we do business, the way we go to school, the way we shop, the way we socialize, even the way we sleep. We hold an entire world of knowledge in the palms of our hands. Today, the average smartphone has more processing power than all of the computers NASA used to send astronauts to the moon. And no matter where we go, the devices which run our daily lives are always with us, working seamlessly. But before anything can happen down here, it must first happen up here. Space is the conduit that connects every system in our global network. Satellite technology powers virtually every aspect of our digital lives. Every time you take a drive, order dinner, or visit the ATM, our global positioning system is hard at work, connecting the dots, keeping the planes on point and the trains on time. You can track your package, you can track your progress, you can even track your best friend. Space helps us make new connections, and it keeps us connected to the ones we love. But that's not all, because our assets in space impact almost every aspect of our daily lives, helping to power the economy, from your own personal accounts to the global markets. The financial world runs on space technology, from humble startups to titans of industry. When commerce is on the move, space makes it happen. 90% of all transportation on planet Earth takes place across our oceans, and 100% of all maritime navigation depends on global positioning technology. This means that every import, every export, every provider, and every customer relies on space to get their products to the right place at the right time. Space also works as a global asset for science, providing researchers the tools they need to protect and conserve our natural world. And when disaster strikes, we are always prepared to track danger, predict peril, and face challenges, no matter what form they may take. From those who protect and serve to those who save lives, we ensure that our most valuable treasures will always remain safe. The work we do is faster, smarter, safer, and more efficient. We rely on this technology to keep the lights on and the engines running. So eventually, we have to ask one very important question. What would happen if our space assets ever came under attack? What if space was no longer the peaceful domain it once was? Fortunately, this is where we come in. We are the warriors of the space domain. We deter aggression, we defeat our nation's enemies, we defend U.S. and allied partner interests, and we deliver the next generation of space combat power. We stand ready, just like we always have from the very beginning. Because no matter what our adversaries throw at us, we will fight and we will win.
Hey, thanks for that. I really enjoy that video. And I don't think there's anything new in that video to this audience that doesn't understand that. But I wanted to share with you, kind of set the stage, but also so you kind of see from a Space Force perspective, as we continue that narrative, we talk to the general American public about the criticality of space. That's just a video that we use to kind of explain, how important space is to us. But I think we understand it. I also think that our policymakers in our government understand it as well. Because in December of 2021, the White House issued the United States Space Priorities Framework document. And in a document, it states that space activities are essential to our way of life. They advance our understanding of the Earth, the universe, and humanity. It enables U.S. national security, create good jobs and economic opportunity, enhance our health and well-being, and inspire us to pursue our dreams. In the June 2024 U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis report, the statistics show that the space economy accounted for over $131 billion, a total of U.S. GDP in 2022. Real GDP grew by 2.3% in the space economy in 2022, faster than the growth of the overall U.S. economy. The statistics also show that in 2022, the space economy accounted for over $230 billion of gross output, and almost $55 billion of private sector compensation, supporting 347,000 private sector jobs. So, access to and use of space is a vital national interest. This priorities framework also goes on to say that the United States will defend its national security interests from the growing scope and scale of space and counter-space threats. Intensifying strategic competition presents a serious threat to U.S. national security interests, including in space. The military doctrines of competitor nations identify space as critical to modern warfare and view the use of counter-space capabilities as a means to both reduce U.S. military effectiveness and to win future wars. Confrontation or conflict, however, are not inevitable. To deter aggression, the U.S., allied partners, and their interests, in a manner that contributes to strategic stability, the United States will accelerate its transition to a more resilient national security space posture and strengthen its ability to detect and attribute hostile acts in space. So let's talk about what the threat is. And I believe this will be a topic that will be covered later on today by Kimber Fischel during her discussion on military space operations considerations on space in China. But I wanted to share with you some of my perspective and what we as a Space Force look at when we talk about the threat to the domain that we all love. China is the nation's pacing challenge today and is rapidly improving its space capabilities to track and target U.S. military forces. China is pursuing a wide range of counter-space capabilities to disrupt and degrade U.S. space capabilities. In fact, in 2015, before the Space Force was even established, China officially designated space as a new domain for warfare. Even before that policy decision, in 2007, China destroyed one of its defunct weather satellites in low Earth orbit with a direct ascent anti-satellite missile, creating more than 2,700 pieces of trackable debris. And in January 2022, China used one of its satellites, Yesterday-21, with its robotic arm to move a derelict Beidou navigation satellite to a graveyard orbit above the geosynchronous landscape. The People's Liberation Army also has multiple ground-based laser weapons able to disrupt, degrade, or damage satellite sensors. Russia also views space as a warfighting domain and believes space supremacy will be a decisive factor in future conflicts. Russia has developed, tested, and fielded a range of reversible and irreversible counter-space systems, including jamming and cyberspace capabilities, directed energy weapons, on-orbit capabilities, and ground-based direct descent anti-satellite missiles. In November of 2021, Russia tested its Noodle direct descent anti-satellite missile against a defunct Soviet satellite in low Earth orbit, creating over 1,000 pieces of trackable debris. And at the onset of the Ukrainian invasion in February 2022, Russia launched a cyber attack against a commercial SATCOM provider targeting Ukrainian military users. Today, Russia may be considering the incorporation of nuclear weapons into its counter-space programs. Specifically, Russia is developing a concerning anti-satellite capability related to a new satellite design to carry a nuclear weapon. We all know a nuclear detonation in outer space could cause devastating consequences for the world and for the global economy. It would affect all countries' national security, their commercial satellites and infrastructure, including any state's ability to use space as a driver for development. Countering the emerging risks in space necessitates modern policies that emphasizes the United States' ability to protect and defend its security interests and drive cooperation with a range of stakeholders. One such policy, released in December of 2023, was a novel Space Activities Authorization and Supervisor Framework. Now that's a mouthful. The Novel Space Activities Authorization and Supervision Framework. that says the United States of America will foster a competitive, responsible, and sustainable U.S. space sector. It says that this supervision framework, this system, must also protect U.S. national interests, including national security and foreign policy, while also maintaining freedom of access to and use of outer space. Another set of aligned policies are the Secretary of Defense's tenets of responsible behavior in space, which include minimizing debris and operating in a professional manner, and the National Space Council's commitment that the United States will not conduct destructive, direct ascent anti-satellite missile testing. As world leaders in the space domain, these are some of our efforts to help define what are called norms of behavior in the domain, which are not as mature or accepted as other domains like in the air, on land, and on the sea. So why am I sitting here today in this cool uniform as a guardian? Well, we've established that the space domain is vital to our way of life, our economy, and our security as well. We also understand that nations are developing capabilities and demonstrating behaviors aimed to place these things at risk. The establishment of the United States Space Force in 2019 as the sixth military branch of the U.S. Armed Forces was a testament to the growing recognition of space as a national security imperative. In December this year, we're going to celebrate our 5th birthday. Yeah, it's been 5 years already. We're hoping at that point we'll have about 14,700 personnel in the service, about 5,000 officers, about 5,000 enlisted members, and a little over 5,000 civilians will make up the service. These Guardians are spread across 46 bases and installations in 18 states and territories. And we have an additional 10 locations at international sites. The United States Space Force falls under the Department of the Air Force, along with their sister service, the United States Air Force. Now, this is a little confusing, but this is just like the Navy and the Marine Corps. The Navy and the Marine Corps are two separate services, but they both fall under the Department of the Navy. And our relationship with the United States Air Force is critical. You know, in the Space Force, we're very mission focused. So a lot of the infrastructure that occur at our installations are provided by the airmen of the United States Air Force. For example, civil engineering, security forces, medical, legal, human capital management are all provided by the professional airmen of the United States Air Force that support the United States Space Force. So under the department, our relationship is critical. That's why Secretary Kendall, the Secretary of the Air Force, uses the phrase, one team, one fight. The Space Force's mandate from the nation is to organize, train, and equip space forces in order to protect and defend American interests in space, as well as the space capabilities that enable and enhance the lethality and effectiveness of the joint force. So, building upon that, our mission statement, our mission is to secure our nation's interests in, from, and to space. Just as the Navy maintains freedom of the seas, the Space Force maintains freedom of the space domain and U.S. activities, both governmental and commercial. Please play the second video for us.
The Army isn't looking for us to seize or defend land areas. The Navy isn't looking for us to control vital sea lanes. The Air Force isn't looking for us to gain and maintain general air superiority. And the Marines aren't looking for us to conduct amphibious operations. What they expect from the U.S. Space Force is to provide space superiority, to control the domain. They need us to conduct global mission operations, to exploit the domain. They rely on us to provide assured space access, to access the domain. Integrated together, the warfighters of the Joint Force support and defend the Constitution of the United States. We are guardians. Semper Supra. Always above.
Thanks, Kenjo. So we have our mission, and we do that through 3 core functions that we just kind of showed in the video. Space superiority, or in the domain from the mission statement, is to control the domain. We do this through several mission areas, missions like orbital warfare, electromagnetic warfare, and space battle management. As the domain becomes increasingly contested, the Space Force is focused on maintaining space superiority to protect U.S. space assets from hostile attacks. This emerging capability requires a deep understanding of the space environment, advanced technologies, and innovative strategies to counter potential threats. Global mission operations is the from in the mission statement. That's to exploit the domain. These mission areas include missile warning, satellite communications, and position, navigation, and timing. Through the command and control of all DoD satellites, satellite operators provide force multiplying effects, such as continuous global coverage, low vulnerability, and autonomous operations. Satellites provide in-theater secure communications, weather, and navigation for ground, air, and fleet operations, and threat warning. This enables a joint force to maintain a tactical advantage in various operational environments, ensuring mission success and the safety of our personnel. Additionally, ground-based and space-based systems monitor for ballistic missile launches around the world, guarding against surprise missile attacks and providing early warning to U.S. military and civilian authorities. Assured space access. That's the two in our mission statement, to access a domain. And we do this through the missions of space launch, range control, cyber operations, and space domain awareness. The Space Force manages space launch operations at the East and West Coast Space Launch Deltas. That's Patrick or Cape Canaveral Space Force Station and Vandenberg Space Force Station in California. These bases provide services, facilities, and range safety control to conduct Department of Defense, NASA, and commercial space launches. This ensures a safe, reliable, and effective launch of satellites and other spacecraft. Another part of this tenet, space domain awareness, which underpins all space operations and is critical to space assured access. A global network of space surveillance sensors provide vital information on the location of satellites and space debris for the nation and for the world. This helps ensure the safety of space operations and protects our space assets from potential collision with debris or other satellites. Today, the Space Force tracks over 46,000 objects in space. 46,000 objects that we're tracking. That's an 83% increase on orbit objects that we're tracking since the Space Force was established in just 5 years, an 83% increase. Of those 46,000 objects, a little over 10,000 are actually active spacecraft. The rest are debris. And because of all those objects, this year alone, we've provided over 800 conjunction notifications to the International Space Station and NASA. And because this is open architecture, and because we believe in responsible behaviors in space, we've also provided 9 close approach notifications for the Chinese space station that we sent to China. With all that debris up in space, this year alone, we've had over 1,000 decays and reentries of objects coming back into the atmosphere. The United States, through the Space Force's 18th Space Defense Squadron, that's out at Vandenberg Space Force Base in California, and the 19th Space Defense Squadron, which is in Virginia, provides tracking data on space objects and communicates space flight safety information through its public website, spacetrack.org. Yeah, we collect this data through all these sensors, and we put it on a website, and we post it for the world to see, because we view this as a responsibility of responsible behavior in the domain. And we do this to enhance the safety and stability of the domain. They collect this data through ground-based radar and optical sensors and space-based systems. And that is through sensors that contribute to this mission, not only military, commercial, academia, partner nations, all believe in the security and safety of the space environment and all feed into this mission set of space domain awareness. So again, when we talk about what our core functions are that align with our mission statement, space superiority for what we do in the domain to control the domain. global mission operations, what we glean from the domain to exploit it, and assured space access for us to get to the domain through access to the domain. So for many years, space operations were conducted under the United States Air Force as a major command. And we did that very well when you consider two of the core functions, the from and to missions. We were, for many years, were able to provide global positioning, PNT, missile warning, satellite communications to really exploit the domain. And we had pretty good success with our ability to access the domain and get into it with our launch capabilities and the space industry that we're able to build within the United States. So we did very well to get to the domain and to try to glean and to get things from the domain to exploit it. But the domain has changed. And as we talked about the threats, things are getting pretty crazy up there. And because of that, the United States realized that we needed now to be able to control the domain. And in the mission statement, that is what we do in the domain that has changed. So in order to control the domain and have space superiority, that was one of the driving factors that the nation decided we had to establish the United States Space Force as a separate service under the Department of the Air Force. So how do we do that? What is our theory? What is our concept to gain and maintain space superiority? Well, General Saltzman released what he called his theory of success last year. It's called competitive endurance. That's a theory of success. The goal of competitive endurance is to ensure our ability to achieve space superiority when necessary, while also maintaining the safety, security, stability, and long-term sustainability of space. And this approach has three core tenets. Avoid operational surprise. Space forces must be able to detect and preempt any changes in the operational environment that could compromise the ability of the joint force to achieve space superiority. This requires a space domain awareness enterprise capable of fusing intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, environmental monitoring, and cooperative reporting into a timely and actionable decision-making process. We also have to deny first mover advantage. We must make a first move strike in space impractical and self-defeating, and thus discouraging any adversary from taking such action in the first place. This requires resilient architectures that can deter, defeat, absorb, and recover from any attack. We also have to have responsible counter space campaigning. We must be able to conduct a sequence of military activities in the space domain that enables us to protect the nation and the joint force from space-enabled attack without generating hazardous debris. So the theory of success: avoid operational surprise, deny first mover advantage, and have responsible counter space campaigning. So we've outlined our core functions and the associated missions and talked about the theory of success and its tenets. But as a service, how do we do this? What's our force employment model to get this done for the nation? Well, many of you may be familiar with several of the military concepts and how they provide capability to the nation and to combatant commands around the world. Most services, they what we call deploy. You've heard that term before. They get on a plane, they get on a ship, and they may go overseas, where they go into the area of responsibility, whether it be in the Middle East, whether it be in Europe, or whether it be in the Pacific. And that's how they execute and provide the capabilities that they are required to as services for the nation. In the Space Force, our concept, our force employment model, is what we refer to as employed in place operations. A few months ago, I had to testify in front of Congress, and I talked about all the amazing things that Guardians do on behalf of the nation 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And not only the capability to secure and protect our way of life, but also our way of war. And when we do that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, at the time that I spoke, which I think was in April, I pulled the data from our systems, and we had about 200 Guardians that were deployed in the traditional sense, you think military operations deploy. But we had thousands of Guardians that were employed in place from their installations and bases, primarily within the United States. They were executing these operations day in and day out from windowless rooms. There were places in Colorado, in Vandenberg, in Florida, in North Dakota. So the Space Force does the missions we just talked about in a different model and force employment, which we call employed in place operations, which is just a different way of serving. It's a different way of thinking about how you provide combat capability, not necessarily getting on a plane or getting on a ship, going out to an austere location. Now, we do have Guardians that do that because that is still required to execute some of our mission sets, but it's a small percentage of overall warfighters we have within the Space Force. So that's a little bit of a nuance in how we execute our core functions, employed in place operations. Well, we also acknowledge and understand the space domain is massive. It's the biggest area of responsibility of any of the services that they're responsible for. We know we can't do this alone. We rely on our allies and partners to help us. One of the initiatives how we partner with like-minded nations is through the Combined Space Operations Initiative, or the CSPO is what we call that, Combined Space Operations Initiative. It comprises of 10 nations, the United States, Australia, Canada, France, Germany, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, Italy, Japan, and Norway. It's these group of like-minded nations who want to make sure we consistently have free and unfettered access to the space domain. And that's one way that we as a Space Force, and really as a DoD, work with like-minded nations to make sure that we can try to develop and adopt norms and behaviors in the space domain and deter any aggressors who may want to try and take away our ability to do that. But, being a Guardian signifies more than just a title. It means being part of a select group of professionals entrusted with the safety and security of our nation within the space domain. Our work is intricate and demands precision, foresight, and an unwavering commitment to excellence. While our contributions may not always be visible, they are indispensable. We enable the joint force to operate with confidence, knowing they have a service dedicated to the space domain. So I kind of hope this overview of the Space Force and its missions provided you with some valuable insight into the role of this vital that we play in the nation's security, its prosperity, and scientific advancement. As we have seen, the Space Force is responsible for safeguarding our interests in space, ensuring the continued functionality of our space-based assets, and maintaining our competitive edge in this increasingly crucial domain. Now, this is not a recruiting pitch, but I thought I wanted to kind of explain or explore some opportunities if any of you are interested in, hey, what does it mean to get into the Space Force and get into this business that I've just talked about? So there are three primary avenues, if you will, for college graduates, or if you're interested in getting into the Space Force with a degree or really without a degree. But here's a little statistics that I like to share. Last year, the Department of Defense and Gallup poll did a survey, and unfortunately, only 23% of 17 to 24-year-olds in the nation are even eligible to serve. So only 23% of the average age of someone joining the service, any branch, are eligible to even serve today. When we even raised the age limit within the Department of the Air Force, you can be as, I won't say old, as experienced as 42 years to join the service, whether the commission and or to enlist in the service. So the age is 42 right now. But even with the age limit up to 42 and 23% of the nation eligible to serve, currently less than 1% serve in uniform. So when I talk about military service, I talk about that we are the 1%. The 1% who have chosen to wear the cloth of the nation and to be a member of the profession of arms within the United States military. And I think because of the 1% that do that, and I think an acknowledgement of the challenges and sacrifices that come with service, though it's extremely rewarding, the military has over 60% approval rating within the United States. 60% approval rating, which is actually higher than most other government institutions or other acknowledged professions within the United States. So if you want to join a team, how do you do so? Well, you can enlist. You can enlist in the Space Force. Go and you enlist and go. You're going to go to basic military training, which is done at Lackland Air Force Base, because we share that with the Air Force. And when you enlist in the Space Force, we have 3 career fields that we really focus on. Because remember, I talked about most of the other infrastructure is provided by the Air Force. So in the Space Force, we're extremely mission focused. So we have 3 kind of functional areas, if you will. We do space operations, cyber operations, and intelligence operations. And we look at the enlisted cadre or enlisted guardians as the service's primary war fighters. They are the subject matter experts on the weapon systems and responsible for training and readiness across the service. And we've seen over the last couple of years, as we've been recruiting enlisted guardians, the guardians that are coming into the Space Force today are typically older, more educated, and experts in their chosen field. About 14% of men and women who actually enlist in the Space Force have a bachelor's degree. About 1% have a master's. And over 50% have at least 15 college credit hours towards their higher education. And we're only recruiting this year. I think our target goal was a little under 700 guardians to enlist into the Space Force in 2024. In 2025, we're looking to recruit and enlist about 800. Here's another kind of important note that makes us the demographic a little different for the Space Force. Almost 11% of individuals who enlisted into the Space Force were over 28 years old. 11% were over 28 years old. And we've had recruits as old as 40 come into the Space Force this year. So it's a very different demographic than the other services. And I think part of that plays into because of the fact that we're only recruiting a small number to come into the service. And let's just face it, with uniforms like this, and it's a really important mission set, we all have a passion for space. I think we're attracting talent that really wants to get into this business and help us explore the unbounded potential that space has to offer. For officers, you can commission with your degree directly into the Space Force. And if you want to have a leadership role, being an officer in the Space Force is an excellent opportunity because our officers are principal leaders and planners. OTS is what we call it, Officer Training School. It's at Maxwell Air Force Base. It's about an 8-week program when you commission to come in. It kind of teaches you what it means to be a member of the profession of arms. And when you come out of Officer Training School, one of the things we've done in the Space Force as we're evolving and changing what it means to be a guardian, specifically an officer commissioned guardian today, we have what we call the Officer Training Course. It's a comprehensive 12-month initial skills training curriculum in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Now, previously, when you commissioned into the Space Force, or really into the Air Force when we were still doing space operations, you had a very defined functional area that you would focus into. You would go to school to be an intelligence officer. You'd go to school to be a cyber officer or a space systems officer. Starting this month in September, we've started this new 12-month kind of deep dive broadening curriculum now where officers, when they commission into the Space Force, are going to go through a battery of schools. They're going to go through a pipeline where they're going to go to the satellite operations school. But they're going to do a couple weeks of intern after that to learn how to apply the skills they learned. Then they're going to go through the intelligence course. They're also going to get a chance to do some internship with some intelligence organizations to learn how to apply that skill craft. And they're going to go to cyber training and then do an internship to apply the skills they learned in the cyber discipline. And what we're trying to do is build broad officers, space officers that understand how to integrate and plan the capabilities that we as a service provide. And with that skill and with that training, there are kind of 5 functions that we ask officers to do. They do cyber operations, intelligence operations, space operations, acquisitions, and engineering. And that's what our commissioned officers do. You know, you could also come into the Space Force if you want to as a government civilian. Over 50% of guardians today, when I talked about the numbers before, are actually civilian guardians. We're a very civilian heavy service, which is kind of a different model as well. But these civilian roles bring specializations, operational stability, unit continuity, and a depth of expertise critical to every joint warfighting function. And they span a wide range of disciplines and specialties, allowing you to leverage your unique skills and expertise in support of the Space Force. Now, as members of the United States Space Force, there are numerous developmental and education opportunities if you become an officer, if you enlist, or you become a guardian civilian in the service. These programs are aimed to foster professional growth, enhance technical skills, and facilitate career advancement. I like to refer this to as part of the guardian experience, that when you come join this profession as a profession of arms in the Space Force as a guardian, is that how do we pour into you and develop you and provide you opportunities and an ecosystem and infrastructure to be able to do that. So here's a couple examples, right? So for officer guardians, they have the Olmsted Scholars Program, which provides officers the opportunities to study at a foreign university and gain a deep understanding of international affairs. We have the Regional Space Advisors Program, which allows officers to serve as advisors to foreign space agencies, fostering international cooperation in space. We have the Scholars Program, which allows you to pursue advanced academic degrees at civilian universities. And of course, I think someone made a comment before about the NASA program. 60% of astronauts came from the military. We have the NASA astronaut program. As a matter of fact, for those of you who are tracking, next week, NASA SpaceX Crew 9 mission is going to launch. And Colonel Nick Hague is going to be the commander of the mission. Colonel Hague is a guardian in the United States Space Force. So we're excited. Wish Colonel Hague the best of luck with the team as they go up to the International Space Station. I myself are hoping to fly to Cape Canaveral to kind of see him off next week if the launch schedule holds. Enlisted Guardians also have opportunities for advanced development, and as we invest in them. We have what we call Education with Industry, which is a program where we send guardians, enlisted guardians, out into the private sector to gain and learn from the innovation, forward thinking, and critical thinking, where we give them pain points that the service has to go learn from industry and then bring back those skills and help us solve the hard problems that we have within the Space Force. We also have the Air Force Institute of Technology, where enlisted members can go earn their master's degree in STEM fields related to their specialty. We also have enlisted guardian opportunities to go to the Space Technology Acquisition and Research course at MIT. Now, all these opportunities, some of them are small, just a couple per year, but it just shows the dedication that we as a service have to pouring into and developing our teammates who are guardians in the service. For our civilian guardians, there's also various internship programs that we have, such as the Department of Defense College Intern Program and the Department of Defense Executive Leadership Development Programs. Again, a lot of great opportunities if you choose to come join the service in one of those capacities. You know, as a service, brand new service, we've tried to think outside the box, try to be innovative as the best we can, and take advantage of the lessons learned from all the other services through the many years, and also embrace the small size that we are as a service. Part of that is the Personnel Management Act, which is going to be enacted, which was enacted in the National Defense Authorization Act of 2024, which allows us to introduce what we call a part-time model, where we're going to have part-time roles for service members to fill. Now, this isn't a reserve or guard component. This is a completely different way of serving in the military. And we're working through what those policies will look like in the near future. We're excited about that. We're also looking how we deal with fitness. We have the holistic health approach and also continuous fitness assessment, leveraging technology. I myself are wearing my wearable watch where I track my health and status and report that back to the Space Force and see whether or not that's a better way to incentivize healthy lifestyle as opposed to the normal, traditional, if you will, PT tests that we do every single year. So if you're interested, I encourage you to explore these opportunities in the future. All right, so I want to save some time for questions. So let me just end with, as the Space Force continues to grow and evolve, it is committed to providing superior space capabilities and ensuring the United States remains a leader in the congested, contested, and competitive domain of space. I just want to say thanks a lot for everyone, for American Public University, for the passion to advocate for limitless possibilities in space. I'm honored to have shared this platform with you all. Let us carry forward the inspiration and knowledge gained from this conference and use it to ignite the imagination of future generations. Together, we can build a future where the cosmos is not just a destination, but a new frontier for human innovation, discovery, and cooperation. Semper Supra. I'm going to turn it over to have some questions. Man, that hour went by fast.
All right. Thank you, John. Thank you so much. Yeah, this is wonderful. So we have a question and answer. It's separate from the chat. If you'd like to put it there, it's a little easier to see and organize for us. But I do see where some questions were asked within the last 5 minutes or so. So I can read those off to you if you'd like.
Sure.
Yeah, someone asked if space weather monitoring is also of interest and of the Space Force.
Yeah, so right now the DMSP constellation is one of the weather constellation satellites that actually the Department of the Air Force works with NOAA, and they actually fly that constellation of DMSP from Schriever Space Force Base in Colorado Springs. Now there are several other NOAA programs that do Earth monitoring systems. So we have some that we have within the Department of Defense, within the Space Force specifically, but we do partner with civil agencies that kind of manage those constellations. But holistically, that data is extremely important to us as a Department of Defense. But the biggest role, I think, as we look at space for environmental monitoring from space is to secure and protect our access to the domain so that we can get that data to make informed decisions. Think about the agricultural impacts and how much more effective and efficient we have been leveraging space-based monitoring systems for the environment. So we're very much interested in making sure that we continue to take advantage of that as a service. But from partnership, we do partner with NOAA on the DMSP constellation today.
Okay, thank you. Someone else asked if the APUS Space Studies is an approved training program for the USSF.
So to be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure. I get overwhelmed sometimes by the amount of programs and opportunities that we have across the Department of Defense to include within the Space Force. So to be honest with you, I will take a note. I'm not 100% sure when that is part of the ecosystem that we have today.
Understood. And I think our department chair at Albin had provided a response to that in the chat that I see as well.
Okay.
If anyone else has questions, we have that Q&A form if you'd like to put them there.
I think I see something that came up, a question about non-military, non-government
Yes.
question. Could you read that for me? I didn't get a chance to see the whole thing.
Yes. Does the USSF provide any assistance with non-military spacecraft such as Juno, Europa Clipper, etc.?
Yeah, so from our space domain awareness mission set, and I talked about, monitoring those over 46,000 objects that are in space. We kind of take it to, because we have the infrastructure and we understand the importance of the domain to keep it safe, that with commercial industries, civil or commercial, or even partner nations, our relationship is pretty open about how we are able to provide them data so that those industry partners can operate safely within the domain. So there is some partnerships with sharing information, if you will, to make sure that they can operate effectively, freely, and safely within the domain. That's probably one of the biggest relationships we have. We also have in one of our operations center called the Commercial Integration Cell, CIC is what they call it, where there are certain industry partners that have actually signed an agreement with the United States Space Force to kind of share information on what they see within the domain to make sure that they're operating effectively and cleanly within the space. So there are official agreements through the Commercial Integration Cell that we have today. It's not every industry partner, but it's a large number of them that do have an official memorandum of understanding with the Space Force.
Okay, thank you. Another question. Will the USSF be involved in space rescue missions?
So I just had this conversation recently, and it kind of came up because I'm sure many of you are tracking, right? Polaris Dawn, I think, was up last week, and think about we now had private commercial spacewalk occurred, right? Polaris Dawn went out further than any human in over 50 years in a commercial, privately organized, funded mission. Um, and as we were watching, some of us were thinking, well, what happened? And knock on wood, nothing did. But if something was to go wrong, and a rescue mission would have to be organized because those commercial or private astronauts were stranded in space. So we don't have that yet from within the space domain, but we're thinking about what does the future hold. And like I talked about earlier, when you think about the Navy, how it provides freedom of maneuver in the sea lanes of transit and commerce today, I think as more and more as we as humanity, especially as a nation, take advantage of the space domain with space tourism, space transit, space vacation. Someday it's going to be a Disney on the moon, probably. I think it's going to be the guardians of the United States Space Force that the nation will look to make sure that just like the Navy does today in the sea lanes, that the Space Force will provide that safety and security in the space domain in the decades to come.
Outstanding. Another question, as humanity reaches out to the moon and Mars, what role will the Space Force play as humans return to deep space exploration?
Yeah, one of the things we're really excited about, where Artemis program is looking to go, I think earlier this year, right? I think for the first time, I think it was it Intuitive Machines, I think it was, for the first time, right? A commercial entity landed on the moon, not a nation endeavor. So we're looking, especially in the cislunar or XGEO, like we call it, like outside of the geosynchronous orbit, outside of how are we looking out to do monitoring and make sure that the same kind of responsibilities we have in the orbits of the Earth. How do we look out further and deeper into space? So I think from the service perspective, right now we're kind of looking at that and starting to ask the questions as civil and commercial entities reach further out into the space domain to the moon and beyond. Our role as the Space Force, how do we have the capabilities and how do we have the policies and infrastructure to continue to look out that far and continue to still provide space situation awareness, communications, position navigation, and timing as we reach to go out. So we're looking at that today as a service.
Outstanding. It looks like we have about a minute left. Let's see one more question. This might be our final one. Looks like the USSF plans to move its operations to the translunar region. Is that a?
Yeah. So I think that's the XGO, right? Or kind of looking at cislunar as we look more and more out into that vicinity. I'm not aware right now of any mission sets or systems that we're looking to put out there as of today, but definitely looking deep at the science and the physics. As you know, orbital mechanics is not the same in lunar XGEO, if you will, cislunar as it is today. So it's a completely different problem set. It's exciting to kind of think about it, and we're working through that. If that kind of what the question was, but I'm not aware right now of any Space Force specific missions that are scheduled to go out that far. But I know their civil and other organizations are looking at that, but we're doing our part to understand it.
Outstanding. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time today, John. This was excellent. We really appreciate this opportunity. So thank you. We'll give everyone, we have a next session beginning in 10 minutes, so we can take a break. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend, and I appreciate everything that you do.